Hello, welcome. This is the follow-up to the previous video, the video about the mass conception of the human head. So, what I would like to begin with is introducing this. First, here's me. You're not going to really see me in this video because of the camera angle I have is above this table that I'm working on. But here's a portrait of me by a friend of mine. So I thought if you really wanted to see me, this is kind of the best I can do. You'll see my hands. So anyhow, so every once in a while I might show my painting here of me once in a while, in case you miss me. If you don't miss me, that's okay. As long as you do a good job in the project. So let's get kind of started with what we're going to be doing. So first off, you should have this 3-grid piece of paper, which I gave you in your portfolio. However, if you don't have that, or if you worked on it and maybe you messed up a couple of them, or you just did 2 of them, not a big deal, not a problem, because in the Blackboard under the file folder for this project, the Mass Conception number 5, I have a couple of extra documents that are about these grids. So there's one called 1 Square. You could print this at home on regular standard size computer paper. So if you needed to, you could print out more of these. You can print out 3 separate ones, or however many you want. So you can download that and just print it out. And the nice thing about these ones is they're actually quite a bit larger than the squares that are in that 11 by 17 inch paper. So wanted to mention that because you might wonder what that's about. Maybe you don't, but it's there for you. So other things, make sure you have some pencils, pretty obvious. Have a couple of pens, ballpoint or like a regular micron pen. I'm just going to use this kind of version of a Sharpie's pen, which is pretty similar. A charcoal pencil might be good, or 2. Eraser, it's always nice, erasers. Okay, so we're going to start off though with the pencil, like a 2H. You can use 2B. You can use a kind of a yellow regular kind of pencil too. Just as long as you have a few of them, or you have a sharpener handy too. The other thing you're going to want to have as a reference for this is the step-by-step instructions, which I have in that same file folder again. So make sure you pay attention to that. We're going to maybe talk a little bit about those anatomical landmarks. So have that with you. The other thing, if you don't have that, the PowerPoint for this project. So it would be really good if you had your PowerPoint displayed somewhere while you did this, or had the printout for this as well. Both of those things would be handy. Also, the other thing I recommend is, what was I going to say? Well, they should be good if you just have all those things. Okay, so your manual, your drawing manual, models and methods would be a good thing to have too as a reference. Okay, we're going to do this. We're just going to do the first part of this project, which is like laying in the egg-like masses. We're going to do this in different steps, so I'll do that first. So video 1 is the egg masses. Video 2 will be the skull, and the third and final video will be fleshing it out, turning it into a human being, kind of more or less. Okay, so on the left side here, we're going to start with the profile. The middle is going to be the straight-on view, and the right square will be our 3/4 view. I am looking at the printout that I gave you guys right here. So I have my references. I also have a screen with the PowerPoint on it handy. You can't see it, not pictured. I have a lot of stuff outside the picture frame that you won't know about because it's just really kind of a big crowded mess in my on my table here. But you can't see it, so it doesn't matter. Hoping that the lighting is good enough. Doing my best here, guys. I don't have a Hollywood production team with me. It's just me and my iPads and a computer and loading a lot of different apps. It's actually quite complicated to do this, to record a video onto a computer screen from an iPad that doesn't have all this kind of junk and buttons and things in the way. So, all right, just to let you know, I had to do some research. Okay, so remember the egg-like masses. I still got this guy. I showed you this in another video. So here's my two egg-like masses. Whoops, got it backwards. So this is the profile. So we're going to try to kind of recreate. We're just try to recreate that a little bit on our page. So we're going to start with the profile, as mentioned, on the left square. Again, if you print out separate squares, that's cool. Just do it 1, 2, 3. I did mention that the eggs should be on an axis, something like that, so that they're tilted. The eggs are not going to be on a horizontal or vertical line. Now this grid, or the square rather, with its lines, is really here to give you some ideas of measurements. So the first profile view is, I mentioned before, is the profile of the head is about as wide as it is tall. Ballpark. Might not be 100% that way, but just consider it that way for starters. So I'm going to go ahead now, I'm going to draw my cranium egg, the cranium mass egg. And the bottom of that egg is going to go along this quarter kind of height line. So this line here represents 1/4 of the height of the grid. There's a half, here's a quarter, here's another quarter, going up horizontally. 1, 2, 3. So that's what that line is for. It's to help you kind of lay that second, or the cranium mass egg in kind of accurately. Keeping in mind that the human head has all kinds of variations to it. That's why we all look different. But there are some general kind of rules of thumb if you want to make it look more or less like a human being. Alright, so here's my cranium egg. And it's okay, you can draw lightly, and you need to redraw or erase at any time. Go ahead and take your time and do that. I'm not going to sweat it too much now. I don't really have an opportunity to erase because I'm live in my own way on TV here. I'm not going to be editing. I don't have an editing team. So I'm going to draw this axis line for my, whoops, that's not good, for my egg. That's going to be more the vertical egg. This is the part of the egg, part of the head rather, that is where the face is going to be. And the edge of that goes out to the very edge of this left square. What I'm going to do is lay this in. And again, go lightly at first, guys. Just like we've been doing in class. You don't need to make these solid dark or black lines. Keep them light. That's why I'm using a 2H pencil. It's a very kind of light valued pencil. It's always easier to make things darker. It's harder to make them lighter. You have to work to make them lighter. So not a big deal. If you do go a little darker, use a pencil, you can erase it. Or you can just draw a bunch of another new line. We're going to be going over this with pen at some point, and then we can just erase all the pencil lines. That's kind of the beauty of it. So I think I'm pretty good on the profile view of my two eggs at least. Let me maybe go in and I'll add I'm going to use a slightly darker pencil. I'll use a 2B pencil. 2B or not 2B? It's a question I can answer that. It's 2B. Finally, we got resolution to that question. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just darken this one just so you can kind of follow it home a little bit better. In class, I like to do this on a chalkboard. 3 squares kind of drawn out on the chalkboard. But this is cool. Similar. I do it all live in the classroom. So I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good with this. Here's my profile. Again, you want to draw these axis lines. Maybe this one looks a little off now. Just to help you get the tilt. We've talked about this. We've talked about axis lines ad nauseum in class. I'm sure you're sick of it. But connecting one point of an object to another at the extremes is really helpful. That's what the axis line is for. They give you this ability to think across the object, but also through the center of it, and not see this as outside shape. Because outlines, again, are like an illusion, but these lines, these internal lines, are more important. All right, well, now we're going to go to the frontal view. So we already got one view kind of done in terms of the egg masses, at least. Alrighty, so let me get my eggs back out at you. So here's our profile view, right? Remember that cranium mass kind of pokes out right here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go and turn this. Now it's facing us, and it's hard to see with the camera, but it's coming out right at you. So now that cranium egg is behind the facial egg, I guess I'd call that. It adds width to it. Got some distortion here, but it is widest at the cranium, behind the ears. All right, so let's go ahead and sketch that in. Now the frontal view is different in a lot of ways because the profile view, the head is as wide as it is tall. Not true in the frontal view because the straight down view is taller and is wide by quite a big margin. So the head really, understanding the head really changes from each view to the next. But to know how to really draw a head, you have to understand it in 360 degrees in order to be able to capture it. So the goal is really, so I'm hoping when I'm done with my 3 views of the head, that it looks like more or less the same person from 3 different views. And that's what I hope you guys can achieve. And these lines that I put in are helpful for comparing one view to the next, especially later on when we get to the features. But all right, so let's go ahead. We're going to draw our egg here. Now the bottom of the egg, the skinny part of the egg, is where the chin is going to be. I should have mentioned that. So the egg is narrower at the bottom in this case, so that's where the chin's going to be. So let's go ahead and think of it that way. So I have our narrow egg. And we're going to basically try to center this egg along that vertical center line of the grid, or the square. So again, go light with it, use a light pencil. A lot of this really is just the materials that you use. If you want to draw a light line, use a light material to do it, a light tool to do it. A lot of you guys in class, I've noticed sometimes, just use a really dark charcoal stick when you're trying to draw something light. Really hard to do that. So draw with a light value material to allow you to draw light. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now don't worry if your egg isn't perfectly symmetrical left to right. Get a good kind of ballpark. Again, this is the vertical egg. We're going to draw the second egg, cranium egg, which is going to be pretty much a perfect circle, because an egg that's turned towards you pretty much forms a perfect circle. Now, it's a circle in its shape, but always remember that these eggs are masses, they're forms, so they have the same form as an actual egg. They're rounded, they're not just outlines. It's not so important at this stage, but it will be later on. But I think from the very beginning, you want to think that way. You want to think about form. You don't want to think about just shape. Shape is 2-dimensional. Form is 3-dimensional. That's the big difference. So here's my vertical egg. Now remember that horizontal egg, or the cranium egg, closer to the horizontal, the bottom of it rests on that quarter line rather on your square. So you want to have that be true in the second view. All views should be true to each other in terms of their relationships, and that's why I put these lines in the grid to help you with that, or the square. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and basically try to draw a circle. The bottom of the circle is going to be here at the quarter line. The top of the circle will be at the very top of my square. Hopefully you guys got that. So remember, circles are kind of best drawn quickly. You don't want to labor over them. The slower you go, kind of the worse they get. Okay, so you're going to add, with that circle, you're going to add width to the head behind that facial or vertical part of the egg. And again, I'm going to do this dotted line, just similar to here. I'm really just following these steps. But that dotted line is a representation of how one form is behind the other. Again, we're thinking almost like a mechanical drawing. If you guys ever took a mechanical drawing class, that's actually a really good class for drawers, for artists. I think every artist should take a mechanical drawing class at some point, because it gets you thinking about how things intersect and or exist one behind the other. Just because something is overlapped, just because one form is overlapped or behind another, doesn't mean that that second form that's being overlapped stops. It continues. And we want to continue those lines through so we see them to the other side. If you work merely just by shape rather than form, you're going to have distortion. You're going to have one side that doesn't line up with the next. So that's why we want to think that way, because that's how things actually are. Our eyesight is limited in its ability to understand or see what's going on. But if we just try to expand upon it and think about relationships and how things interact when we don't see them, we're going to be a lot better off capturing what we see. Just because you don't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that is something that children, when they're really, really little, like when someone leaves the room and goes into another room, they think the person disappears. But it does, of course, they don't disappear. But now, just because one line is hidden behind another line, and one form is hidden by another form, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't stop existing. You just can't see it at that moment or from that viewpoint. All right, so here's my frontal view. My egg might get a little bit too pointed at the bottom. I might round it a little bit more, make my chin slightly wider there. Again, take a look at this. Take your time with this. Again, step back. Okay, so here's my cranium right there, which is the widest part of the head. And again, that's behind the facial part of the egg. So I got the frontal view done, the eggs. Now we're going on to my favorite view. A lot of you might think this is the most challenging view, and I guess it is, the 3/4 view. But it's the one that is, to me, the most interesting, because it shows the head from kind of two different directions. You're going to have a 2-point perspective that happens when you think about it this way. And if you can draw this view, it means you really know what you're looking at, and you really understand how forms interact. And the 3/4 view is when we look at people, more times than not, we're seeing their head in some variation of 3/4. So the profile is there, the straight on is there. The 3/4 is literally halfway between the profile and straight on. So take that to heart, 3/4. A lot of times people don't actually really think, when they say 3/4, they don't actually think about what that means, but it's quite literal in the fact that we're only going to draw 3/4 of the view of the head, where the profile and the frontal are actually complete views in their own opposite ways. Okay, so we're going to we'll do the facial part of the head first. We're going to draw, and again, following along on our guide here. Let me pull this out one more time. So we're going to draw this view on the right side. And again, this is going to be our head. This is a straight on view. We're going to draw it slightly like that, okay? Lots of fun doing this. They also say that the 3/4 view is the one that shows a person's likeness the best. So a lot of famous portraits, paintings are 3/4 view, because it really kind of captures the sitter's unique aspects of their face better than a straight on or profile view. Okay, so the narrow part of the egg, once again, is at the bottom of the page. And just like I mentioned, this view is going to be, the width of the head is going to be kind of 3/4 of the width of that square. See what I mean? Take that 3/4 view to heart. It's not just a term. It's actually defines what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an egg. Again, it's going to be tilted. It's going to be tilted to the right. That vertical egg, which our face is going to be eventually part of. All right. And my axis line, probably should have drawn that first, but draw an axis line through that. And you might find, the thing about the axis line is kind of a true center in the sense that it should be equal parts to the left and the right of it, more or less. All right, there's my vertical egg. Now I'm going to go and draw the horizontal egg, which is behind the vertical egg, yet you'll see more of it than you saw in the straight on view, but less of it than you saw in the profile. So here is that kind of looking at you. This dotted line here kind of represents how the form of the facial part of the egg would continue on behind that. Yeah, so I think this is a pretty good model. Remember that center line? That's going to come into play here. You have a true center line in that the square is providing you a center line in that frontal view, but now the center line, or the midline of the head, you're going to have to make that up in this view, or at least consider it. Okay, so I've kind of mentioned before that those two forms interlocked, the cranium mass and the facial mass interlock and kind of click together. One form goes behind the other. I'm going to draw my center, or my midline rather, of my facial part of my egg at the 3/4 point over that. Keep in mind, when you draw lines on forms, you want to imagine that you're touching them. So if you draw a line on an egg, you're going to have a curved line. You're not going to have a straight line. You can't draw a straight line on a round form. That's impossible. All right, so there's that. And now I'm going to go ahead and draw my cranium mass. This time I'm going to draw my axis line first. Should have done that with the previous one, but it's okay. So here comes my cranium mass. Now this is the egg here that is turned slightly towards you. So we got the profile, we got straight on. Now it's slightly turned towards you. So if I go like this, pull that away, that's what we're trying to draw. We're trying to draw that angle right there. And I mentioned earlier in the demo yesterday or 2 days ago, I like to imagine that center part, that circle there representing the very center of my egg, the very top of the egg turned towards me. I'm having a hard time with this egg. Now it's not going to be quite the same as the profile view, because it's foreshortened in this 3/4 view. You don't see all of it. You only see, once again, 3/4 of it. That's looking okay. I'm going to go ahead and use a slightly darker pencil. Use that. That was a 2H I just drew with. I'm using the 2B now. I'm going to go ahead and just draw that in. Make it a little clearer to me what I'm doing, and hopefully to you as well. And remember, those eggs all fit in the same ratio or relationship to that square. So this 3/4 view, that bottom egg is going to be touching that 1/4 kind of horizontal line. So that's going to help make this consistent from one view to the next. Okay? All right, so again, darkening my eggs here so I know a little bit more exactly what line is what. I should tilt this back. And we're almost done with step 1. So yeah, here's my midline. Again, imagining this is important because the features are going to be a large part determined by that midline that I just drew. And I like to put that kind of circle there, kind of represent where that part of the egg in this view here, where I have that, I have this kind of hole here, represent how that comes right there. So this circle that you see here, I want to represent that here. And imagine that that axis line that you drew for your cranium egg is kind of centered on that circle, more or less. I like to imagine, like, if I put an arrow there, like if an arrow was shot to the very center of someone's forehead from a 3/4 view, it would hit kind of right there, something like that. Okay? Now, I think we're good for the next stage coming up. And I'm going to call it a video for this part 1. And so the second part coming up, we're going to be laying in the skull. So we'll be looking at the skull a lot. Look at this line here. I can fix this line a little bit there. Okay. Again, if you need to erase, redo these, no problem. Again, you can print out plenty of extras of these at any time if you go to the Blackboard folder for this. Okay, so that's going to be it for this part. Thank you.